Hi, in this video I will be doing some advanced configuration of the Linux agent for the Centrify Infrastructure Services. This is a continuation of the eval series videos. This is in May 2018. If you've used a software in the past, it's formerly called Centrify Server Suite. I'm assuming you've already watched the other videos and you've set up everything along the way. In this series we've already set up the back end, set up the OUs, made my zones. All my test users can log in, all my policies for logging in, all that kind of stuff. If you haven't done that, please refer to the other videos. So yeah, again, at this point, I've already installed the agent. I'm all good to go. So what we're going to do in this video is talk about some advanced configuration of the Linux agent. Part 1, hopefully I'll have a part 2 video at another time. So the Centrify agent can do AD bridging and also privilege management. We're talking about rights, roles, role-based access control, and dzdo. So in Centrify terminology, we used to say the AD bridging was called direct control and the privilege management was direct authorize. So the standard way of raising your privilege on a Unix machine is with sudo, which is based off a sudoers file. With Centrify, you type dzdo instead of sudo, and it's based off policies stored in AD. So this way all your policies are in one place and they get replicated out throughout all of Active Directory. Our Centrify agents are going to pick them up as part of their policies, and now we have privilege management policies pushed out to all our Linux machines. We're going to discuss computer roles, a little more effective way of assigning rights and roles to a subgroup of computers in a zone. If you have a couple hundred computers in a zone, you don't need to give someone the right to log in and do certain privileges on all those machines. Maybe it's only a subset. Maybe it's just the Apache Linux computers and things like that. So that's what computer roles is great for. We'll also discuss setting up single sign-on in the OpenSSH and with the PuTTY client, and then also talk about the Unix logon role, creating a copy of it with a no password role. So logging in with a Kerberos ticket only, doing single sign-on, not allowing people to log in with a password. So let's begin. So a little recap review. This is the environment I've been using for the entire video series. I already have in my domain Centrify VMS, Centrify.vms. I have a global zone, 3 children zones. I have a Linux child zone. I have a test user that can log in. I've already had the Centrify agent deployed on 2 machines, an NSEN6 and a new CentOS. My NSEN6 is also an Apache server, and I'm going to have some Apache admins that can modify some conf files and stop and start the HTTPD service. New CentOS is not. So I'm going to want to set up my Unix admins can log in everywhere, and my Apache admins can only log on to the Apache computers. And we're going to set that up. But as of now, all I have is a Linux child zone, and I have my test user that can log on with a login role over all the computers in the zone. So again, just to recap, global zone, children zone, I like to define everything in my global zone and then apply them at a child zone level. We already have a role. The default login role has a right in it. Again, the way Centrify does things is we have rights and roles. You define rights, some built-in rights out of the box like login all, and some SSH rights. And we're going to define some command rights. But you take these rights, you put them into a role, and then we have these roles like on Windows. There's a default Windows login, a default Unix logon. In other videos, I made some Windows roles as well. But the Unix login role was a default one that had this login all right that's already down in the rights definition. So put rights in the roles, and now I can assign that role at a child zone or at a computer level for a user or an AD group. So that's what we've already done down here. So the definition was up in the global, and I assigned to that child zone. One thing I want to show you is we're going to get to this later. This login role, if I right-click on it and do properties, one thing you'll notice that's kind of cool is, first of all roles you can do available time. If for some reason you wanted people to log on only during the day or only after hours, so they can only log in from 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. or all day on the weekends. So there's things like that you could do. We don't need to do any of that, but that is pretty cool. But also under system rights, notice this login role. You can do, it's set up with password login and single sign-on login. Well, what if you don't want to do password logins? We have a lot of my clients like to log in with smart cards and then use Kerberos tickets to single sign on in, and they want to prevent people from logging in with passwords. So one thing we can do in Centrify is, and we'll get to this later on, I'm going to right click. I want to make a role just like this, but take away the password option. So I can go to role definitions up here on the left side, so it's all listed here. And I can go in here and I can right click and say copy, and I'm going to paste. And I can double click and open it up. This is going to be, I'm going to call it no password. All right, and then if I go into system rights, I'm going to unclick the password login. So for this particular role, I don't want people to log in with a password at all. All right, so that's fine. We're going to get to that later on in the video. I just want to set that up now. So again, I can refresh this so I have nice in alphabetical order. But I got a regular login role, and I've already assigned that to my Diana Worth. My test user I have assigned at the child zone level down here. All right. So really, Diana Worth is part of the Unix admin team. So the Unix admin team should be able to log into all machines, all Unix machines, and be able to do any. You want them to be able to have any elevated privileges, run anything as root. The old wheel group, they should be able to do anything as root. But we still want them to log in as themselves, and we still want to log it that they ran it. But these are the top level admins. So what we want to do is we want to create this role, and not just for Diana Worth, anyone else who's an admin, they can log in everywhere, and then we also make sure they can run elevated privileges. So let's go back. Again, I like to define everything globally. So under the Unix rights definition, I'm going to make a new command, and this is where I'm going to make sudo-like rights. It's not a rip and replace. We're not replacing sudo. Sudo will still work. Eventually, you might want to zero out your sudo's file and keep it empty, because Centrify has replacement with it, and the command is dzdo. But instead of having a sudoers file that's stored in every machine, these policies are stored in AD. And by the way, we can import, if you right-click it, we can import a sudoers file. And it goes into a temporary location. If you watch the earlier videos, it goes into a compact SQL database, and we massage the data, and then we can bring it into this GUI, put it into Active Directory, and we can make it into Centrify commands and rights and roles. We're not going to do that right here. We're going to do this one at a time. All right, so inside of here, I'm going to write, inside of my commands, I'm going to say new command. So basically, I want these top-level Unix admins to be able to run anything. So we need to give a nice name and convention. So I'm going to call it like Unix wheel equivalent all. So they can run all commands as root, basically. Still going to use the Centrify dzdo command. So what command is it? This is a pattern matching. I'm going to do star, and then system specific path star. So with the Centrify, we're whitelisting what they can run. So you specifically say what they can run. So you can say these 5 commands, these 10 applications. But for this particular one, I'm saying star.star. They can run anything. The priority, the lower the number, the higher priority. So for this specific role or this specific command, I want to keep it as 0. If someone runs a pattern matching that matches a couple of them, the higher priority wins. So for people in this group, I want them to run as root. So I want to make sure this matches. So I'm going to keep this priority 0. I'll make other ones 1, and some lower priorities I might make them 2. If we so star.star, go to restricted shell. A restricted shell is not a standard shell. The standard shell, you log in, and then we can get elevated privileges, which is what we're setting up now. A restricted shell, you log in, and you only get a certain subset of commands. So this star.star should not exist in the restricted shell, so we do not want to allow this to run in there. I want to run as root. For this particular one, we're running as root, nothing in my environment. And for attributes, I want to re-authenticate the current user. So when they do these commands, what do? We ask them for their AD password. So that's all we can do here. What we can do, if we had the rest of the Centrify platform, where you're talking to the connector and the rest of the tenant, we can do the other MFA factors that Centrify has, SMS text, mobile authenticator, oath, things like that. But we're not doing that in this video. We just have the standard agent without the rest of the platform. So all we can do is re-auth with the password. You don't have to do anything. If you happen to have one of those accounts in AD, they're smart card only, you can't do this because you don't know your password. For this particular environment, we can do the password. So let's keep the password on here and then hit apply and OK. So I have this right. So now I got to make a role and put this into that role. So if I go to role definitions, right click over here and say add role. Again, I like to do nice naming conventions. It makes it easier to find these things later. So my role is for Unix admin all. This is the role of people that can do everything. And I'm going to assign this to an AD group of admins. So in here, we want to make sure it's log in with non-restricted shell. We don't want this available for restricted shells, and we don't need any of these options. So I've created a role. Now I need to put that right into it. This writes down we made in the commands. So I'm going to right click on it and say add right. And we should have my nice right here, Unix wheel equivalent all. So now, again, I can right click on it and go to properties and go to system rights and or available times here if I wanted to change this time. Well, I'm allowing this available all the time. I don't need that. So now I have this role. So who do I assign this role to? Well, I have some Unix admins. So if you don't have an AD group for Unix admins, let's make one. So if I go into my groups, I'm just going to right click in here and I'm going to say new group Unix admins. And I can right click on here and do properties, and I'm going to add my test user. So now the idea with role-based access control, you have an AD group can do something. And that way we don't need a lot of carrying and feeding of Centrify on a daily basis. All their role-based access controls will buy AD groups and even AD groups of computers, as we'll show later. So I don't have to go into Centrify. I just modify AD groups inside of Active Directory. So all these Unix admins, they should be able to log into all Unix computers or all Linux computers in my environment. So in the past, I had this role assignment that Diana Worth could log on. Well, what I'm going to do is I want all Unix admins to log in. So I'm going to find the Unix login role. Don't worry about the no pass. We're going to do that later. So the regular Unix login role, click OK. And I want to hit AD group or AD account, change it to group, and then my Unix admins. Oh, I already had another one. All right, that's fine. So Unix admins group. Go into AD properties, make sure I have this right one. There you go. So, turns out, so Unix admins. Oh yeah, I had another Unix admin group right there. Let me actually delete that one. Don't need to have two of them. So a Unix admin group with my Diana Worth, my test user, and that's why I have this AD group has the right to log in. There's no reason to get rid of Diana Worth, or no reason to keep that in there. Let's delete it. Again, you could do individual assignments for individual users at a zone level or even at a specific computer level. You could say an individual user can log into one computer. And that's good for one-off exceptions, but really I'm doing an AD group can log in. So role-based access control. So now if I right-click on this child zone and do show effective Unix user rights, Diana should still be able to log in because she's part of this group. And she has the right to log in, but no commands yet. So let's give her the commands. So all the commands they can do now, if I go on this role assignment, when we made a role for this. So if I do assign role, here's that role admin all that we just made earlier that has my start out star right, add AD client or AD account, go to group, Unix admins. So Unix admins can log in and then they get raised privileges. So it's kind of like stacking the privilege. Now you could have, just to let you know, people do this a little bit different in some places. My role definitions, remember the Unix login role had the login all right. This admin role has this raised privilege right. I could put in here, I could add the right for login all to this role and only have one role. Instead, or that's just one role that has all the things you can do, or kind of stack the roles in there. All depends on how you want to set up your environment. The reason is, some of my clients have Unix users, and they can log in everywhere. So they give the Unix users AD group the right to log in, which is maybe 100 people, and then the Unix admins can raise the privilege, and that's only 5 or 10 people. Other clients I have, only admins are logging into Unix computers anyway, so we have no reason to have different roles. So it all depends on your environment. So again, I've added these two roles. So now if I go to my child zone and right-click and say show effective rights, Diana Worth has two assignments. The right to log in and right to have privileges. I go to PAM access, login all, commands, star.star, right? So she's all good. And again, the right to log in, right to run privileges. If you wanted to go into, earlier when I defined the role, we had this times. When's the role available? But also one thing to show you here is when I do this role assignment. So in the role assignment, if you now go into properties, look at this, start and expire. Mine's forever, but maybe this is for contractors or something. You can have it start at a certain time, or you can have it expire. So either the role's forever and you can put people in and out of the group, or maybe the actual assignment here expires at a certain time. So we can expire at a certain time into here. All right. So I'm going to have mine go forever, but these are some cool options in here. So I'm all good to go, right? So again, the way this works is this is an MMC snap-in. I'm making changes to the Centrify data. I'm actually putting data in this Centrify OU. All my data is actually going under here. I've modified data on a DC. I'm connected to DC1. There's DC to DC replication. My agent, if you go over here, I could be connected to DC 3 or 4, depending on my environment, right? So there's DC to DC replication, and then the agent itself is going to connect to its domain controller and get its newest, latest policy. I think it used to be 20 minutes. We might have changed the default policy to 30, but again, it's configurable how often this agent checks for a new policy. If we don't want to sit around and wait, we can actually do this AD flush command. And that says, hey, get rid of your cache policy and go to your domain controller and look and see who can look and grab your policy. So my AD query is still the same. But there's another one where I can do DZ info. All those rights and roles show up with DZ info. I'm root, so if I do DZ info for a certain user, only root can do that. Everyone else can only do DZ info for themselves. So I can look at it for Diana Worth, and there you go. So she can do star.star. And I was actually logged in as my test user, so I can exit out, do DZ info for myself, and it should be there. So notice she now can do star.star. So if I try to do something like cat etchy shadow, permission denied, dzdo, I should be able to do this, and should prompt me for a password. First time you ever run it, you get this warning. I'm going to do a password, and there you go. And this has a certain timeout, so if I keep doing it, it's not going to keep asking me for my password until it goes away. And then I could also do other things because I have star.star here. Let's do this. Right? So star.star. So Diana Worth, anyone that's in this AD group. So now going forward, all you got to do is put people in that AD group, and they're going to be able to log in everywhere and have this raised privileges. Now, again, we're assuming, remember the old videos, everyone's got to have a profile. I only have a profile for Diana Worth, but when you set this up in production, you're going to have one for everyone. And we can bulk import users. We can have this built automatically with a batch job. So you can have all your hundreds of thousands of users always have this UIDs and all this stuff set. Again, we went over this in an earlier video. But the idea is all that's set. Now all you got to do is, because of this role assignment is by AD groups, somebody goes in ADuct and they go into this Unix admins group, and all they got to do is add users into this, add members into this group, and they're going to get access everywhere and they're going to get login role and raise privileges. And that's it. You never had to go into the Centrify GUI at all. Just going into AD and modifying AD groups. So what about those people outside of the this use case of admins? So these admins can log in everywhere, and they're going to get raised privileges. But what about, say, Apache admins? I only have one computer that has Apache on it, my NSEN 6. My new CentOS don't. I could have thousands of computers in here. My role assignment's given all these Unix admins log in every single computer in the zone. Could be thousands. That's fine. They're the top level admins. But I only want my Apache admins to have login rights and a few privileges on just Apache computers. So inside of every computer, you can go in, you'll see role assignments. I can give individual users or AD groups a certain role inside one computer, that's not a bad one-off thing to do every now and then, but in general, that's too hard. That's too much of a pain. We can make a subgroup of this, and then we can make my role assignments of that. I just want Apache users, Apache admins to log in and have privileges on Apache computers. And what we can do is, if you have an AD group of users called Apache admins, and then have an AD group of computers for Apache servers, Centrify allows you to make a role just for that. If you're in this role, you get that access just on that AD group. So an AD group of users gets this access on an AD group of computers, and that's what the computer roles are. So let's set that up. So I have a test user. Wanda Webb is an Apache user, Apache admin. So what I want to do is make some rights and roles for my Apache admins. Again, I like to define things globally. I'm going to go to my global zone and go under Unix rights definitions, and I'm going to go to commands. So I'm going to right click in here and I'm going to say new command. I like to have some nice naming conventions, so some nice names so I know what it's going to do. And then my command is, you saw me run it earlier with my dworth, but there's actually some things for stopping and starting the actual HTTP daemon star. So I'm doing a pattern matching, so it's service HTTPD star. So any of those commands afterwards going to work. All right, and then what kind of path does it have? This one is a system path, and on this one I'm going to do priority 1. So, and priority 0 was for my star people. This is a lower priority at priority 1. And I'm all right for this to run in a restricted shell. I'm going to run as root. My HTTP daemon is running as root. And then I don't need any, let's not do reauth for this particular command. So another command these users might do is modify the config file for Apache. So if I right click and say new command, let's make another one, Unix command conf file or something. Right? And the actual command is vi etc. No. So I'm doing this specific command that they can run. Oh, you know what? I put it in the wrong place. So I have a name, a description, and then the actual command. So I'm going to allow them the vi, the etc, httpd conf, that file. And this is, let's see, that is a standard path. And again, priority 1. Restricted shell, I'm okay with this being a restricted shell. I'm going to run as root. And then for attributes, let's reauth with the password. All right, hit apply, okay. So I have 2 rights. Now we need to make a role, and then we're going to assign that role. So again, I'm in global zone under role definitions. Right click in here and say add role. And let's say role Unix Apache admins, right? Again, I'm okay with this being non-restricted shell, so I'm all good. Hit OK. So I need to add those 2 rights. Right click on it, add right. I should have nice naming conventions. I got to find it nice and easy. 2 Apache commands. So I'm all done making my role. So I know I have Apache admins ready to go, but what we need is I want an AD group for these Apaches, for the users, and an AD group for the admins. I mean, for the computers. So let's pretend I don't have anything up here for Apache. I'm going to right click in here, and I'm going to say new group. So all my Apache admins, I'm going to have a group. Oh. And then I want my test user is a person called Wanda Webb. Let's just find her. So whatever your test user is. So I have an AD group of users that represents all my Apache admins. Could be hundreds in there, or 5 or 6 or something. And now an AD group of computers that represents all the Apache computers. So I do group. How did I do it before? Did I do all caps? Yeah. So all my Apache servers. So I can go in there and add, and then add a member, and I want that one of my machines. Add computers. So the idea is I'm going to set this rule inside of Centrify that Apache, all the users in the Apache admins group can log in and get elevated privileges only on the computers in the Apache admin servers group. So that's all set up. And that way, going forward, you won't have to modify Centrify. There'll be no daily carrying and feeding of Centrify. Just people with the right rights can modify AD groups, and that's it. So let's set this up inside of Centrify. So go into role definitions, and let's kind of close all this out. So I've defined all these things globally. Remember, I have my role definition here globally. I have Apache admins with these 2 commands. So now I want to assign it down in my child zone. So if I go to my child zone, let's go to authorization and go to computer roles. So this is where I make a new computer role because I want to give a subset of access. Remember, I have 2 computers. I could have 200. I want to do some kind of policy that only affects a subset here. So for my computer roles, I'm going to right-click and say Create Computer Role. How about a name, Unix, Apache, admins. And then I need an AD group. So what is my computers group? I'm going to find it. So my Apache servers. So this is, again, a subset. So from all my Apache servers, if I open this up on the left side, this is my new assignment. So you notice this is my name, and it affects only my AD group, Apache servers. If I actually click on members, you'll see what's already figured out. I only have 1 member in there. All right. So here's my role assignments. So again, I'm on the left side, computer roles, Apache admins, the specific computer role, and role assignment. Now I'm assigning a role assignment to this particular computer role. So again, like anything else, I right-click, assign role. First of all, I need them to log in. So I'm going to give them that login role. And I'm going to give it to the group. So the Apache admins can log in. And then I'm going to right-click and assign role. And I want that special role we made for the Apache role. Here's my role. And then again, group. So again, if my role had both a login in it, that'd be fine. But my role only gives them the elevated privileges. I'm stacking them here. So anyone in this AD group can log in for all the computers in this AD group. And they can also do the elevated privileges. So we have this set up, right? So, but one thing, if you've been paying attention, I'm still missing something. If I right-click on NSEN6, because you can down to a certain computer and say, show effective user rights, I don't have my Wanda Web yet, right? The reason is, she's been given a role assignment because she's in these groups, right? She's in my Apache admins. Wanda Web's in there, and she's been given this role assignment. However, she does not have profile yet. So again, we could be building this automatically with batch jobs and bulk loading things in. Let's find my Wanda. So you have to have the Unix profile, children's zone inherited. Now if I right-click on NSEN6 and say show effective user rights, Wanda Web, role assignment. One to log in and one to get raised privileges with my PAM access, and then the commands that she can run. All right. So I should be good to go. oh, if I go down to new CentOS and say show effective user rights, notice WandaWeb can't log in. All right, because my Apache admin's computer role is only for this AD group of computers, and that only contains NSEN6 in there. So I'd be good to go. I gotta flush it out again, so I don't have to wait. Now you notice WandaWeb can log in. Only root can look at DZ info for another user. So WandaWeb should have these elevated commands. So I'm going to bring up PuTTY and let's log in as my test Apache admin, WandaWeb. Create a home directory. And she can do DZ info on herself. She's had 2 elevated privileges. Let's try one of those. So can't do it on my own. Centrify dzdo. There you go. And I can even start it or stop it. Ooh, can't type. Now remember, I set this up not to prompt me for my password. The other thing she can do is, if she tries to, what's the conf file? Can't type. So notice it's read only. All right. So doesn't have permission to do that, but with dzdo, prompt it for password. Now I can. All right. So again, raise privileges given to a role, and if I need someone else to have this, if WandaWeb, there's more people on this team, all they got to do is add them into the right AD groups, and then they get the access. You bring up a new computer and put Apache on it. All you got to do is put that new computer in the AD group of computers, and then it'll have all the right access. So again, you won't have to go into Centrify to do all this. You just have to go into AD, an ADUCT, into AD to do this stuff. So, oh yeah, so good thing to everything I've been doing here, I've been raising my privileges, right? So one thing we can look at is you can see all the audit trail that Centrify leaves. Whenever when someone does a dzdo, it says who does it. So you can do it, look at it in real time, looking at that log file. Anytime somebody does something uses Centrify dzdo to raise their privilege, we get this nice command, so you know what role they did, who did it. WandaWeb did it. So even though she's running as root to do something, we know WandaWeb ran that command. So, oh, what does that mean? So because all this is inside the message file, we have this audit trail. So now this can be sucked up by SIM systems. This can be sucked up by the Splunk and the Arc sites and go into nice, pretty dashboards. So we're going to write everything into the local log so they can be sucked up like that. So the next thing I want to talk about is single sign-on with Kerberos tickets. And we've gone over this in the past. In the past video, talked about this. This is Centrify's PuTTY. If you open up SSH and go into auth, we automatically click this GSS API. The last couple versions of regular PuTTY has this as well. So this is what when we went to log in. Remember when I go to log in to something, if I type in someone else, it asks me for their password. However, remember when I typed in mine, I'm logged in as Diana Worth right now. I have a Kerberos ticket. GSS API says I can grab that Kerberos ticket and it logs me in. But I still had to type dworth, right? I still had to type that. So what we can do with Centrify here, if you go into the PuTTY client, Centrify, I can go into Kerberos and I can say temp Kerberos, and it's going to use my name. All right. So what I can do is let me just do this again. I can load this session, and I'm going to change it. Go to Kerberos, do attempt, and then call this and save it. So then my Kerberos one, just going to log me in. I didn't have to type in my name. So how did I do that? Well, again, on the SSH client side, which on a Windows machine is a PuTTY, we modified to allow it to grab it, the Kerberos tickets. On the SSH server side, it has to do it too. It's also with GSS API. Now, if you use the Centrify OpenSSH package, on my machine, I have that on there. I have the OpenSSH package. So we've already set that up. That is out of, let's see, what do we have? PuTTY, Centrify, DC, config. So notice this is what it is. So we've already done this for you. So if you use Centrify as SSH, it's all good to go. If you were using stock OpenSSH, that's all you got to do. And we have a KB article, 1099, how to set this up. So really, you're setting this up on the SSH server side. You got to add these variables, and then in the config file, restart your SSH server. If you're running from a Mac or a Unix client, and you actually have an SSH client on that Unix machine, you use PuTTY on Windows, but on Unix you have an SSH client. You got to modify this. Again, the SSH client grabs the Kerberos tickets. The SSH server has to handle them. So we've already had this ready to go. So that's why we logged in with Kerberos tickets, because once we set our PuTTY, the Centrify server was all good to go. All right, but what about the use cases? I have some customers that like to set their environment to smart card only. So maybe I'm logged on with a smart card right now. I got a Kerberos ticket, and I want to log on to Unix machines using that Kerberos ticket, and I want to forbid password-based logons. So the Centrify always takes the source of truth to be Active Directory. If you've happened to go into Active Directory and you've set some things, you can go to a user's account and you can actually set smart card as required. So if you do that, you can't log in with a password. So Active Directory is always the source of truth. Some people can do that in environments, but some people can't. It ends up breaking some applications downstream. So with Centrify, at least we can harden it on the endpoint. We can do the smart card mandatory at the endpoint, no password allowed. So remember we set that up in the beginning in our Access Manager. So we go into Access Manager here. You'll notice when we did it earlier, remember we made a Unix login and then no password. So in this particular role, we're not allowing password logins. So let's show what happens when we change that. So let's go into our authorization. Remember we let Diana Worth as part of the admins group and they can log in. Well, let's assign a role here of the no password. So I go in here and I do no password login to Diana's group. She is the admins. And then I get rid of the login role. All right. So she can log in, but without a password. It has to be a Kerberos ticket, single sign-on, and then up here, elevated privileges. We still have that. Same thing with a computer role, right? So if I go to my computer role for Wanda Web, or all the people that are Apache admins. So login role. Well, let's give it the login no password role. Login no password. Change the group. These are Apache admins, right? So my Apache admins, and then I want to take away the regular login. Delete that. All right. So now all my users can only log in. No one can log in with a password. It has to be a Kerberos ticket. Okay. So I'm already on this machine. Again, we got to reflush. I could wait. This will happen automatically if you wait enough time, but I want to force it now. And notice, oops. Login roles can change. So if I log in with my Kerberos, all good, no problem. But if I log in as non-Kerberos and I try to log in as Wanda Web and type in the password, I'm not allowed. All right. So Centrify is not allowing password-based logins, only Kerberos logins. And even from here, if I try to log in, Cannot. So that's important. If you have set up environments where you want to forbid password-based logins for some compliance reasons, that's a good thing to set up with the Centrify role here, the no login role. So that's it. So as a recap, we talked about setting up some some rights and roles. Made some new rights to elevate your privilege. A star for my admins who can do anything. We made specific rights for my Apache admins who can only run a couple commands. Did some assignments for the entire zone. Also did some computer roles. An AD group of users. Oh, I did it down here. An AD group of users can only get login to an AD group of computers. And that's going to be a lot more of slicing, dicing, how you can do across the enterprise. Well, that's all I want to show you in this video. Thank you very much.